We call the North Plains Planning Commission for April 10th order at 6 o'clock. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just roll call.
Thank you. Chair King,
Here.
Vice Chair LaBonte, here, Commissioner Howell,
Here.
Commissioner Cannavale,
Here.
Commissioner Miller,
Here.
Commissioner Tara,
Here.
Commissioner Van Domelen,
Here.
and your ex officio this evening is Mayor Carrie Linehan. Present. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 4 is public comments. This time is available for anyone in the audience or the Zoom for any planning commission business that is not on the. Is there anyone? Seeing none in the audience, anyone on Zoom?
No one is raising their hand on Zoom.
All
Oh,
right.
wait, we do, no, sorry, it was my cursor. It was on one of the people's screens there and it turned into a hand.
Is the issue of fines on people's houses or yards going to be presented? as
Yeah,
part of
it's a
the
public
agenda?
hearing that's coming up later. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we will move on then to item number 5 is a approval of the minutes for March the 13th. Are there any corrections? I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve the minutes for March 13th, 2024.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Commissioner Miller and second by Commissioner Levante for approval of the March 13 minutes as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Hearing none, minutes are passed as presented. Okay, item number 6 is a public hearing. Our first public hearing is a quasi judicial in which we will either take a decision of approval to continue or denial. Appealable to city council. And so with that, could I please get the description of the public hearing process?
Thank you, Chair King. The North Plains Planning Commission will conduct a quasi judicial public hearing on file number BR 24-001, Frank's Excavation. The order of business will be as follows. The commission chair will open the public hearing and ask for declarations of conflict of interest, ex parte contact, or personal bias. The commission chair will request the staff report. The commissioners may ask questions at any time during the public hearing. Any written correspondence submitted on behalf of the subject application will be orally presented, including the individual's name and address. The applicant will be invited to present oral testimony first. The public will be invited to provide oral and written testimony on the proposed land use permit, first by proponents, then opponents, followed by those individuals who are neutral. Additional staff comments will then be presented. If opposing testimony is presented, the applicant will be provided an opportunity for rebuttal. Opponents will also be provided an opportunity to speak in regards to the rebuttal. The commission chair will call for commission comments and discussion. The commission chair will close the public hearing or continue the hearing to a specific time and date. If the commission chair closes the public hearing, a decision will then be entered by the planning commission. The decision will then be entered into a final findings of fact order, which will then be mailed with a letter detailing the decision to all parties of the proceedings. Appeals of a land use decision must be received by the city recorder within 15 days following the date the decision is mailed to the parties. All persons testifying shall be deemed parties to the proceedings and must provide their name, full mailing address or email address. Parties will be notified of the decision, continuances, appeals, or other procedural actions required by the code and state law. The city municipal code, zoning and development standards specifies applicable criteria to be relied upon in making a decision. Criteria and findings of fact are in the city staff report. Public testimony should be limited to criteria and findings of fact or to other city or state land use standards that the person testifying believes applies to the proposed land use action. Failure to raise an issue in person or in writing with sufficient detail to afford the hearing body and parties to the hearing an opportunity to respond to that issue precludes appeal from the city council or land use board, or to seek damages to the Washington County Circuit Court due to condition of approval.
Thank you. Going to open the public hearing at 6:05 for DR 24-001 Frank's Excavation. Are there any of the planning commissioners that wish to declare any conflict of interest, ex parte contact? Hearing none, is there anyone that challenges any of the commissioners to hear this case? Hearing none. Could I please get the staff report and agency comments and recommendations?
Yes, thank you, Chair King. Tonight, Rowan will be doing the staff report, so I'll be turning the computer and mic over to Rowan now. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, commissioners. Just give me 1 second to pull up the presentation. Okay. Good evening, commissioners. As mentioned, this will be the hearing for Frank's Excavation, City File DR 24-001. The applicant's request is for a type 3 design review approval for a new office, shop, and yard for an excavation contracting business. Staff has noticed both owners within 250 feet of tax lots, 200 and 100 on February 29th, 2024. One comment was received via email expressing concern regarding the increase in traffic and potential for collisions. Staff also noticed our agencies, including Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue, Washington County Department of Land Use and Transportation, and Clean Water Services. Agencies provided conditions and they've been incorporated into the staff report. A few technical corrections in the staff report, the version that you have received. One condition provided by Washington County Department of Land Use and Transportation was cut short in the PDF, should read it cuts short in the PDF at both and should read tax lots 100 and 200 except for shared access approved with this land use. And another slight technical correction, one condition was duplicated and should read obtain Clean Water Services approval of sanitary sewer system. That one was cut short as well. In this staff report, we have consulted the following code sections, mainly design review approval and review criteria, standards for the M2 General Industrial District, and then public facility and service requirements, street standards, and standards for off-street parking and loading. There we go. This is the subject site. The subject site is 3.05 acres. It's resulting from a previous partition, which divided the larger property into 3 properties. Here you can see that this is the middle property. It currently does not have access, but a blanket easement was provided at the time of the partition to provide access to this property. On the westerly side, you'll see a smaller property with an existing residential use. This property is zoned M2 General Industrial. On the easterly side, you will see a property zoned institutional and public use. This is the site of the now in construction North Plains Public Works Facility. To the south, we have Northwest West Union Road. It's a county arterial road, and to the north, the railroad right of way. This is the proposed site plan provided by the applicant. You can see here we have the provided easement. This is part of the blanket easement and will close the previous access point on parcel 1 to the west, providing shared access to these two properties. In the central location of the site plan, we have the proposed shop and office, which will include a total of 7 bay doors, office space, conference space, and a covered patio area. Surrounding that, we have on the southern side a parking area. This will be a public access parking area. And after that, on the northern side, we have a private gated and fenced storage and materials yard. On the southeasterly corner, we have a stormwater detention facility. This is a close-up of the previous site plan. Some things I would like to call out here. We have a stub out for future EV charging. EV charging is not required per our current code. There are less than, I've got handy little laser pointer here. Here will be that EV charging. EV charging is not required per our code because less than 50 spaces of parking are being provided. However, they've gone above and provided future access here. We also have bike rack per our requirements. And something that we received feedback on in the staff report, we are indicating that there's an abundance of loading space. However, that's not identified specifically on the plan. Per code, this application requires that 1 loading space of 12 by 20 feet and 14 feet clear headspace is required for this type of development. We have mapped for your convenience some possible loading space options for this property. These are also the locations of 4 of the bay doors. As previously mentioned, there is an abundance of space on the site to load or unload cargo that is nowhere in conflict with the traffic circulation pattern or parking. This is the submitted landscaping plan. Landscaping requirements for this use are minimal. However, we do see quite a bit of landscaping in the stormwater detention facility and along the frontage with street trees provided as well as shrubbery. I've conditioned additional landscaping to what you see here and discussed this with the applicant who has agreed that it would be appropriate. The additional landscaping will be on the western side, buffering the existing residential use, and that is covered in section 155.055 A9, buffering for design review. These are the elevations of the proposed shop office building, the southern elevation and the west elevation, which will be most visible from Northwest West Union Road. As you can see, we have the bike rack here and a front entry. The west side will have 3 bay doors. I do want to emphasize that these were not considered as potential loading zones due to their conflict with the travel path. As mentioned, there is excess loading space with the other bay doors. It is a staff recommendation that this application receive approval by the Planning Commission with the recommended conditions of approval outlined in the staff report. I've provided here some potential motions for you to make, and I'll open it up to questions at this point. Thank you.
Are there any questions with the staff report?
Regarding the submission by the public comment that was submitted, did you find any information in there or comments in there related to discrepancies in the submitted design versus the type 3 design criteria?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Well, did you find in the public comment that was submitted, did you find any notifications in there of discrepancies in the design submitted versus the design requirements?
Regarding traffic safety, yeah, we did receive a comment concerned with the speeds on Northwest Union Road and the resulting traffic from this use. Washington County Land Use and Development has also noted a potential issue for site distance. Site distance study was conducted and submitted to us and Washington County and found to be adequate. And that is what we require.
And just to add to that a little bit, Commissioner Miller, we do have a site distance exhibit that was provided by the applicant, but I think we'll wait and let the applicant address that, and we can pull that up and they can explain that to you. But that was, to the Rowan's point, that was really the only issue we had to work out.
Thank you. That's no further.
Any other questions in the staff report? Mr. Labonte?
I'm going to follow up on Commissioner Miller's question regarding my comment. Is there I was trying to flip through my plans here, but is there going to be lighting at that intersection on the north side of West Union?
Yes, they will be installing lighting as required, and there's existing streetlights as well.
And then just bear with me a moment here because I made lots of notes going through the packet. In our packet on page 14, I was just wondering if the consolidation of the driveway, does that satisfy all the criteria for the original partition approval? Is that what the easement stuff is doing?
When the land was partitioned, there was a blanket access easement placed over all the lots to the benefit of each other. And so they weren't sure where that access point was going to be brought in. So that's why they put it across every lot to the benefit of each lot. Now that this lot is being developed, we now know where that shared access point is going to be.
Okay. And then as we move on through the packet, on page 15, and staff briefly touched upon this, on page 15 under the referring to the residential use on the west side, even though it's zoned M2, I've never heard us condition property for a use rather than what the property is actually zoned for.
Yeah, let me help with that a little bit. As Rowan noted, the buffering and screening requirement came from the design review chapter. So if you go into 155.055 subsection 9, that talks about buffering and screening of maintenance yards, other type of things of that nature. And so we made the finding that due to the fact that that existing home predated any of the zoning in the city, it would make sense to provide some additional buffering for that property as a result of the industrial zoning coming onto that property. So we relied on that buffering requirement in the design review criteria to make that request. We shared that back with the applicant and his client, and we discussed that with them, and they agreed that that would probably be a good idea.
So the design review standard actually says use, not zone?
It says that you can buffer these type of uses, right? Uses that have yards, maintenance yards, other type of equipment and whatnot. Those type of situations can require additional buffering.
I believe the exact language is that we can require buffering to minimize adverse impacts to neighboring properties.
Moving on. Just a couple of questions. On page 17 of the staff report, halfway down under findings, I think we've either got misnumberings or things are missing. So it just says B landscaping, but there's no C. There's a B on the prior page. And then the same thing repeats itself through the packet. Page 19, under design review specific use standards, we start out with sub G. There's no A through F. Are those incorrectly omitted, or is it just a formatting issue?
Within the staff report, you'll notice that some sections where perhaps I don't have it in front of me right now, but there are instances where our code goes through each and every requirement per zone. And you may see us skip to the industrial zone that's relevant. I'm not
Yes, I
sure.
think
Do
what
we
you're
have a
seeing
copy of-
there is, as Rowan noted, there are some sections of the code that, speak to other, zoning districts or other requirements that are not applicable. And so the section that was provided was the applicable section of that particular subsection of the code.
Okay, so that must be the same thing for the next page under permitted uses. It only lists industrial heavy.
Yes, that's just to minimize the amount of pages that you must flip through. If we list the requirements for every single zone, it would be a multiple 100-page document.
And the only other thing that I had was, under the conditions, you do note again that 8-foot PUE, but I'm just curious why it's even noted when it's a condition of the partition. Is it necessary or was it?
I'm sorry, what's that?
The condition of a 8-foot PUE.
Yes, that was really unnecessary. That just got brought in through our contract engineer provided that in his list of conditions, and we should have omitted it because there is an existing PUE there. So it's really just redundant, and we know it's there. So it's really no burden to the applicant.
Any other question for the staff report? Hearing none, and the applicant, please come forward. Please state your name and address for the record.
Our business cards. My name is Tony Weller. I'm a police engineer in Lake Oswego, Oregon. It's 4500 Cruise Way, Suite 250. And in the audience tonight are Frank and Maggie Cannon, who are the owners and operating the facility, but I will be the one to hopefully testify on their behalf. So I think the staff report was quite thorough and went through all the code sections one by one, but I don't know that I have anything there. We did discuss the landscaping requirement, and we're agreeable to it and understand the for it there, and I agree that the code can be part of the buffering there. The question of the streetlights, if Washington County, we've already contacted them, is their road, and we're putting another set of streetlights on our side of the continuing across the existing streetlight at the reservoir access point. There'll be 3 more streetlights on our side and 1 near the entrance of there is actually one across the street, but it kind of faces more to Stewart Lane. This will face on the west end at that point. So, and the lighting plan was included in the application material. That may not have been carried forward in the staff report. Oh, sorry about mine. So there's a street light gonna be right there, and then there, and then the existing one's there. So there, and as well as the site lighting, yard light, but that was part of the application materials that were required as lighting. So, and we coordinated that with Washington County's street lighting staff. So that's what addressed. The site, I mean, as you're all aware, the city invested quite a bit of money in infrastructure to serve this area, and so utilities are all existing, and that was great news for our clients. So partly why they're there. So the other was site distances. I don't know if you have questions about that. I can certainly address that. I did provide an exhibit if there's more questions about it. If we went out there and measured it and provided that measurement to Washington County as a certification, they've accepted it. So they've been able to review it, but I'm happy to address that if you have any more questions with that. The access location for this property was actually dictated in the partition plat, and the same with the consolidating. It was mention of it as Mr. Miller mentioned with the blanket easement over all of the properties, this also went to the reservoir site. But once all these properties are developed, it's determined that access wasn't necessary anymore or desirable, but the joint access between tax lot 100 and 200 is a requirement for both the county and the city. So that's why they're consolidated like that. And in the future, 100, if that ever redevelops, may relocate how they get access into the site, but there is a shared access for both parcels there. And I'd be happy to answer any other questions you might have.
Are there any questions of the testimony? Go ahead, Commissioner Miller.
As the expected equipment that will be used, is there anything that is expected to be of such length that it would not be able to pull clear of the road while waiting to open the gate? Clear of West Union?
No, I don't think so. It's just a dump truck and a trailer with a, you know, it's not a set of, it's not like, 5 foot long, transport trucks. It's, most of it is dump trucks and then maybe like a trailer for like a backhoe. So it's not of that length. And we provided a 30-foot wide access all the way to West Union, so those turning movements would be easy to manipulate. And actually, through the paved parking area, we kept that 30 foot there to allow those turning movements to circulate better around the site. So that was intentional. Typically, in a parking lot, you have a 24-foot aisle. We went ahead and provided a 30 just to make it easier for the equipment to come into the site without queuing issues or that kind of stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Labonte?
Just one question on the storage on the lot itself. On the east side, you have a couple of stalls for storage material. Is there any plans for, piles anywhere other than that?
I heard that's the story, but what, any plans for what?
For storage of, lack of a better word, debris, I don't know, rock, dirt, whatever.
Yeah, that's what it's for, like gravel storage.
Right, so your plan shows it on the east side. Is there any other area on the lot that you're?
At this point, this is what we've identified. I think as they get moved in and use the site more, they'll get a better feel for it. But right now, so those bins that we show that look like spaces are kind of like those precast concrete blocks. And then that way they can dump, bark dust or, different types of rock material there. We didn't have a real specific number that we needed. I think we have more than they're using currently, but we're just trying to make wise use of the site, and that seemed to be a good location for it.
Any other questions from the planning commission?
Can you tell me how many employees
How?
are? Yeah, in the staff report, the maximum, including the office staff, was about 25.
Any other questions? Hearing none, thank you, sir. Okay, thank you. Is there anyone wishing to testify in favor of this proponent? Is there anyone on the Zoom?
There will be, I believe. Just a minute, we gotta get that up here for you. Maybe go ahead and ask that question again, Chair King. I'm not sure if everybody heard that.
Anyone wishing to testify in favor of proponent?
Not seeing any.
Okay, hearing or seeing none. Anyone wishing to testify as an opponent against?
I'm not seeing any hands right now from the screen, and then nobody in the audience who is present.
Hearing none or seeing none, is there anyone that wants to testify neither for nor against? It's neutral.
There's no hands on the screen.
Okay, seeing or hearing none. Since there's no opponent, we don't need any rebuttal. So any discussion before I close? Questions? Okay, I will close the public hearing for DR 24-001 Frank's Excavation at 6:29. I'll entertain a motion.
Would you like us to go back to the PowerPoint to share those motion options with you?
Yes.
Well, I would like to move to approve design review DR 24-001 Springs excavation.
Sorry, we couldn't get that, but quickly for you.
It was been moved by Commissioner Labonte and second by Commissioner Houck for approval of file number DR 24-001 Frank's excavation. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Any abstention? All right. Passes unanimously. Okay. We will move on to public hearing number B, which is TA 24-25 sign code text amendment. This is a legislative public hearing in which city council or which the planning commission will be making recommendations to city council. So if I could please get the language for the legislative public hearing.
Thank you, Chair. The North Plains Planning Commission will conduct a legislative public hearing regarding file TA 24-25 sign code text amendment. The order of business will be as follows. The commission chair will open the public hearing and request the staff report. The commissioners may ask questions at any time during the public hearing. Any written correspondence submitted on behalf of this item will be orally presented, including the individual's name and address. The public will then be invited to provide oral and or written testimony on the proposed sign code text amendment. Additional staff comments will then be presented. The commission chair will call for commission comments and discussion. The commission chair will close the public hearing or continue the hearing to a specific time and date. All persons testifying shall be deemed parties to the proceeding and must provide their name and full correct mailing address, or if preferred, their email address. Parties will then be decisions, continuances, appeals, or other procedural actions required by state law. The city municipal code, zoning, and development standards specify applicable criteria to be relied upon in making a decision. Those criteria and findings of fact are in the city staff report. Public testimony should be limited to those criteria and findings of fact, or to other city or state land use standards that the person testifying believes applies to the proposed sign code text amendment. Failure to raise an issue in person or in writing with sufficient detail to afford the hearing body and parties to the hearing an opportunity to respond to that issue precludes appeal to the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to call the public hearing for TA 24-25 sign code text amendment to order at 6:33. As this is legislative, there is no conflict of interest. Could I please get the staff report?
Yes, absolutely, Chair King. Thank you. This is one of those type of presentations where you just got to start from the top and just walk through it because it's a lot that we're proposing to change. So we'll just start with the very beginning of the code, which is the definition section. So one of the things we wanted to do with this amendment is try to address some signage that we don't have right now as being part of our definitions. And we also wanted to try and clarify some definitions, either through pictures and images or with some additional language so people knew what those signs were and how we're going to measure them and what they might look like. So as you can see, one of the first things we did is we didn't feel that well, let me back up. As you can see at the top, all the new text is in blue writing and double underlined and highlighted in yellow. All of the text that is being proposed to be eliminated is in red with a strike through, and it also highlighted. So when it came to the abandoned signs, we basically redid the definition and added a whole new definition for abandoned signs. We did not have anything in the code for air blown signs, so we brought that definition into the code now, as we're starting to see a lot more of those. We've also didn't have anything in the code for attention flags. So we added that definition and provided some examples as well, so folks knew what we were talking about. The next change came at changeable copy signs. We added some language to that to help clarify what it is that we're referring to when we talk about changeable copy signs. We deleted column signs, and the reason we did that is it was drastically similar to a monument sign, that we had some overlay there, and so we decided to remove the definition of column signs and remove that from the zoning districts that it was in, and rely on our monument sign definition for signs of that nature. We added some kind of scripter updates. So here on the electronic message signs, we had electronic message signs in bold and capital. The planning commission thought that was unnecessary, and so we changed it to just a standard non-bold and standard font for that. And that happens throughout many of these definitions. We also added some stuff to subsection 5 of that, because when this sign code was written, there was no planning manager at the city. The city now has a planning manager and myself. And so the planning manager is the person who will, work on those situations now. We provided some additional clarification language on how to define the frontage of a property. With grade, we took the boldness out and the capital letters and made that normal. Monument signs, we added the images there that you see, and pretty much left the definition as it is right now. And the mural signage, we again just basically took out all the capitals and the bolds, and then we took out some redundancies where murals was in the wording in 1, 2, and 3. It was a little redundant there, so we just took that out and then added a little bit to sub 3 there to clarify what changing images could potentially be. Pole signs, we basically updated the whole definition there, and we added some imagery to show you what would qualify as a pole sign. Is that enough? Moving on. Portable sign. Again, just some scripter era updates there. Same with projecting signs, but we did add some imagery for projecting signs so you can get an idea what those look like. We also added some imagery and some additional language for rooftop signs. I wish we could have found a better picture, but it's hard to find neutral pictures when you're looking for signs. We didn't want to promote any one business, so even on these, it was very challenging to find stuff. So we tried to stay as neutral as we could with our imagery, so folks weren't thinking that we're playing favorites for any one particular business. We also updated some of the sign area definition, and we provided some examples for that on how to measure the different types of signs. Moving on, we updated just again scripter stuff on temporary signs. We added some language to the unlawful sign definition. Again, these were just for clarification purposes. On the wall sign, we added the imagery, again, just to help people better understand what a wall sign could look like. On the wayfinding, we basically redid the whole definition. We took out 1 and 2 and just made a wayfinding definition now. So we didn't feel that there was necessary for those sub definitions there. We could just capture it all in one definition. And window signs, we also provided basically a new definition for what a window sign could be. So that is the updates that we did to the definition section. As far as the standards and permit section, we didn't make any updates to that. We added a section for exempt signs, and what this section is getting at is largely governmental signs that you find in the right of way, your speed signs, your directional signs, informational signs that are required by local governments and whatnot. Those signs are safety signs by and large, and help drivers and other folks understand how to navigate. And so they're very important. And so we exempted those type of signs. We also exempted signage that you might find like at a like an elementary school or junior high type baseball field or something where they put their sponsors up in the outfield. We've exempted those type of signs. We've exempted some window signs. And so that's what you're seeing here in subsections A. That should have been B, not B is actually, excuse me, B is under the the writing there. I don't know how that happened, but subsection A, B, and C largely get at government signs, where A is talking about those signs that you would see in windows and signs that you would find maybe at a ball field or something like that. So that's what we're exempting or proposing to exempt. Because we added that section there, we needed to change the numbering of all the sections below. So that's why you see the 7 crossed out and the 8 updated. In the residential zone, all we did is strike column signs from the definition there, or from the use, because we took it out of the code, but you still get the monument sign. So the monument sign actually covers both of those type of situations now, because the definition basically is speaking to both at this time. Signs in commercial zones, the biggest change that you'll see there is we updated the the copy sign and the monument sign. Something is wrong here, though. Excuse me. Let me back up a little bit. So for clarification, we have 2 commercial zones in the city. We have our C1 zone, which is limited to just downtown businesses. They're zone C1. That's the only place you find that zoning in the city. The other zoning district that is commercial is C2, and that is the commercial zoning that you see along Glencoe. And so in the C1 zone, we only changed out the monument. We took the column sign out since that was removed from the definitions. And then we added some additional language on the changeable copy sign. That was the only changes we made to the C1 zone. In the C2 zone, we went a little bit further and added some additional language to the monument signs. We were starting to see a lot of signage larger than 32 square feet. So we started doing some research on other jurisdictions to see what type of signage they allowed and how large the signs they started to allow. And 40 feet was kind of in the middle of what we were seeing. So we proposed to increase the square footage of a monument sign from 32 square feet to 40 square feet and put a maximum height limit on those signs of 8 feet. So that was the big change that we did for the C2 zone. You can see there's some other changes, but largely that's for column signs. And then rooftop signs were not originally allowed in the C2 zone. And the planning commission believed that maybe we should take a look at that, and they felt that it would be necessary to start allowing some rooftop signs in the C2 zone. As you start to get businesses that are behind other businesses and whatnot, it can be challenging to see those businesses. And as the city grows, there could be potential for that same arrangement. So it felt like there was a need to maybe allow some rooftop signs. So we took it from being a prohibited sign in the C2 zone to now allowing a rooftop sign in the C2 zone. So that was a really big change for that particular zoning district. Moving on into the neighborhood community zone. This zone applies to 2 subdivisions. It's the new ones in town. The Sunset Ridge subdivision is zoned neighborhood community, and the Bryn Hill subdivision is also zoned neighborhood community. Those are the only 2 areas in the city that have this zoning designation. Largely, it was just updating some terminology there, just the, as the numbers changed, we just updated the numbers accordingly for that one. In the institutional zone, same thing, just updated some numbering. In the industrial zone, we have 2 industrial zones in the city. We have a light industrial zone and M1 zone. It's not in many places of the city. It's kind of behind commercial, if you will, back behind some of those properties. There is some light industrial zoning there. There's some light industrial zoning on the north side of the train tracks at the west end down there, going towards the end of the city limits. And then the others, industrial zoning that we have is M2, and that is largely what you see along Commercial Street, that fronts Commercial down at the west end there, west of Main Street, and also out off of Northwest West Union Road. That's where you would find that zoning. So this applies to those zoning districts. And in the M1 zoning district, again, we updated the wall sign to allow for a larger wall sign, but the wall sign cannot exceed 150 square feet. One of the things we've noticed in the industrial areas is the buildings can be quite large. And when you have signing that's not proportionate to those buildings, it can look a little off. And so we did get some requests for some large signing on some industrial buildings, and we started looking at, right now that we only allow 32 square feet, and that seemed disproportionate to what we were getting in terms of the building sizes in these zoning districts. So we decided to allow for a larger wall sign on these buildings, and that's what this change is right here. And A. In C, we allowed for the same type of monument sign that you can now get in the C2 zone under this proposal, the 40 square feet and a maximum height of 8. We also added in, in lieu of a monument sign, you may have a pole sign or a freestanding sign. That is a new addition. We did not allow that before. But again, particularly in the M2 zone, off of Northwest West Union, you have some businesses that have no frontage on West Union. They're back all the way to the train tracks. And so it's very challenging to see those businesses. So it made sense to maybe allow them to have a pole sign on their property to help identify their location. And we also allowed for rooftop signs as well. And that was all in the M1. And that got carried through into the M2 zone as well. Basically, the same changes that went into the M1 also came into the M2 zone. So those are the changes that we're proposing for our industrial zones. And as you can see, we struck pole signs and rooftop signs from being prohibited in both zones, because now we're proposing for those signs to be allowed in both of those zoning districts. As for temporary signs, we added some clarification language to what you would consider election signs. And it is the one sentence right here that is highlighted. So we added that those signs that you are allowed to install on your property during the election season, that those signs should be for a candidate or a measure in that election cycle. So we just don't have signs for whatever during an election. We wanted to make sure it was for something that the voters would be participating and voting on in that election cycle. So that was the only addition that we added to the temporary signs, except for we changed the numbering, as I noted, in all of these below that new chapter. In portable signs, we did no changes, and additional regulations applicable to all zones. We did not. There. You only have one sign on the bottom. Let me get through this, and then we'll take comments. Okay, thank you. I'm almost done. I'm pretty close. So portable signs, we had no changes. Additional regulations, we had no changes. On the abandoned signs and enforcement, we eliminated the old section and brought in a new section. So that's what you see here. It's basically talking about, if these signs are abandoned and they're not being utilized for a certain amount of time, we're going to ask that those signs be taken down. And if those signs do not get taken down in a certain amount of time, then the city would have the ability to go in and remove those signs. This is similar to what you would see in maybe the summertime for a property that's not maintained and becomes kind of a fire hazard or a nuisance. We try to go out to those folks and let them know that we would like them to mow that and clean it up. If they don't, we go out and mow it and bill them. Same type of situation for abandoned signs. We don't want that type of stuff just being a blight for the city. We'd like it to be taken down, and if not, then we will, engage in getting that sign removed. As for non-conforming signs, we had no changes, and that is the end, but that is not the end. What happened? I thought there was one more, but I might be wrong. So anyhow, that is the extent of the sign code updates that we are proposing. At this time, I'll turn it back over to the chair for any questions that the planning commission may have and continue on with the conversation.
Any questions from the planning commission on the staff report? Commissioner Van Allen? Commissioner House? Commissioner Sunday? It looks like the minutes in the same parts. It says that the last page is 125 of 130. That's the whole report. That's got the additional things that are in our packet. 5 other pages of the packet. Any other questions with the planning commission? No. Levante?
Yes, I just have a couple.
Yeah.
On page 118 of our packet, under unlawful sign, it's maybe just some wordsmithing. The new language violates the sign code of the city. Would it just be violates the city sign code?
I'm sorry, what definition are you at?
Unlawful sign
118.
on page 118 of our packet.
118. Where am I on the packet? I'm sorry, let me look at where you're at here. Okay. Unlawful signs.
So basically adding city in front of sign and then striking of the city.
Okay. So what you're saying is where it says approvals of the city, you wanted to say city approvals.
No, at the very end, where we added the new language, it currently says violates the sign code of the city.
Mhm.
I'm proposing violates the city sign code.
Okay.
The next item I have is on page 22 of our packet. It's just a typo, I believe. Under signs in industrial zones, item number 2 says signs complying with the following regulations are allowed in the MT-2 zone. I don't know what MT is.
MT is our heavy industrial zone. So it should be under that chapter, right?
Right, but it should be M2, not MT.
Or does it say MT? Oh, yeah, that looks like that was a previous error there, wasn't it? Good catch. Yeah, we will definitely update that to say just M2. Looks like that's in the current code right now.
And then moving on to page 123 of our packet under temporary signs. Currently under the all zones, we added language, temporary election signs must be for candidate or measure in the current election cycle.
Mhm.
I think that's unnecessary if we just modify the first line. If the first line read, signs not exceeding 6 square feet in the area during the period from 6 weeks prior to the current election cycle or the time the election is called, whichever is earlier to 5 days after the election. It's my understanding you cannot have an election item that is not a candidate or a measure. So it's just redundant language.
Yeah, I think that would be a great conversation among the planning commission, as the planning commission came up with this terminology. So if there's a change, I probably should be agreed to by all members.
Page 125 at the top, under item C, rights removed. The last sentence, it has, it says the county auditor for collection. I don't believe that's correct. Do you send stuff to the county auditor? It's my understanding liens are filed in the county recorder's office.
Andy, do you have any insight on that in terms of when we are doing a situation where we're going to maybe try and put a lien on someone's property for being reimbursed for doing a removal of a sign. Does that process work through the county auditor?
Commissioner Labonte may be correct there. We'll do some research and follow up and have to discuss.
Yeah, no, good. Yeah, good point. So yeah, let us look into that a little bit further. That was my understanding. So yeah, let me clarify that and we can bring that back to you.
That was the last, thank you.
Any other questions, Commissioner Parra? No. So now that we have done that, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to testify? Please come forward.
If you would like me to scroll to a particular section or something that you'd like to speak to, just let me know and I'll bring that up.
State your name and address for the record.
My name is Joanne Bryant. I live at 15251 Northwest Quarry Road in North Plains. And I'm here because there's been a great deal of discussion in online in groups regarding the removal of signs from people's yards previously. And I would like to make the case that if I were a person living in one of the subdivisions and say somebody I seriously disagreed with took the helm of the country and I wanted to say I was against it, I might want to have a sign up saying, I disagree with this. It may not be on the part of the election. It may not be under your criteria. It may not be allowed, even though it's a temporary sign and it's on a person's personal property. I know there have been signs like "Let's Go Brandon" hanging as huge flags as I approached North Plains, and no one talked to that person. So let's talk about freedom of speech, especially speech regarding the expansion of North Plains into farmland, where there's a great number of us who are very concerned about our quality of life. And we have a lot of allies among those many people from many countries who've moved here to work at Intel or some other huge corporation. They also
Could you
really
please
like.
keep your comments to the sign code and not go into a political speech? Okay, thank you.
I want to make the point that the signage rule, even though it hasn't changed, doesn't allow the people in the subdivisions that have recently been developed to post any sign about their convictions.
Staff have any comment?
There's a lot there. I'm trying to figure out what your main point is in relationship to the amendment that we're proposing. As you heard, Commissioner Labonte had a little bit of a suggested change for that. I'm sure they'll talk about that when they get into their deliberation.
I'm not addressing the changes that you made, but
Right.
also I'm addressing the previously existent reason that signs were taken away.
Well, I don't think any signs were taken away. I don't know of any signs that were taken down by the city myself personally. And as you see in the code, we didn't change anything that was previously allowed, right? We left all that language. We're saying that, you can have these type of signs, they're temporary, they're not exceeding 6 square feet. They're up for 6 weeks prior. They come down, about 5 days after the election. The only thing we did is just try to clarify, that it would make sense that, if you're going to put up an election type of a sign, that would be for something that's in the current election cycle, right? When you start getting into some of those other type of signs like Black Lives Matters, different Go Brandon or whatever you want to call them, those tend to go outside maybe a little bit, if more of a freedom of speech type of situation. We're not trying to limit the speech of you wanting to put up something for an election. We're saying do that, but they should only be temporary. It's kind of like a for sale sign, right? You put a for sale sign up and that's allowed temporarily, but once the house sells, then the sign gets taken down.
the Let's Go Brandon stuff was up for years after the election, and no one apparently.
That one, those, it's a fine line. I agree with you. It's a very fine line, when it comes to signs and, you know, freedom of speech and all those type of things. So we're not trying to limit that. We're just trying to say that there probably should be there's probably a right time and a right place to have these signs placed on property. And it's probably 6 weeks prior to an election to let people know what you're thinking. And then once the election's over, it's probably appropriate for those signs to be removed when they're related to a particular measure or a particular candidate, I should say. But we didn't sit there and say anything about those other type of signs.
One of my concerns is that, is it part of the subdivision code that these two new subdivisions don't allow full signs?
No, we don't have that as part of a requirement for a new subdivision.
So why is it listed that the new subdivisions don't allow signs?
I'm not sure what you're saying.
Misread that, but it looked like the residential area is not allowed. So
The difference,
isn't it?
just to clarify, the difference is that the main part of the city has R zones. And the two expansion areas have what's called neighborhood communities. So that's a zone and they have to be identified. I don't think the sign code says anything that they can't have signs. It's just another zoning to be identified.
That's correct.
They're
Go back
separate.
to the part where it says residential.
So here's what we have for residential zones. And we have 3. We have an R 2.5, we have an R5 and an R 7.5. Those are the 3 residential zones that the city has in the code. And that's what this chapter here, that's what this chapter here is speaking to, those 3 specific residential zoning districts. And it's saying that these are the type of permitted signs that you could put up there. Again, we didn't take anything out. All we did is remove the column sign because we took that out of the definition.
So when I'm looking at it,
And then if you,
sign,
right,
signs,
Right.
roof signs and murals, yes.
I think that would help clarify, because it's more like a monument for a business sign. It's a permanent sign that's affixed in the ground.
That would be a
It's not
pole
just-
sign.
not a small.
Right, it's not.
No.
I don't know.
These are large signs that you would see.
It's not a
residential.
It's not a temporary sign. A full sign is a permanent sign.
So-
They're
Full sign.
monument, I don't.
Yeah, so
So I just want to clarify, there's a lot of people who are really wild about this, and I don't know why they're not on here, but I'm just wanting to clarify. People in the city of North Plains are able to put up a sign in their yards, no matter whether they're in the residential or in these new communities. They can put up a sign on a stick that says what their opinion is about the expansion or farmland.
that is correct. So
And
even in the neighborhood community zone, we recognize that as being a residential type of a zone.
okay.
So when it says temporary signs and it says in a residential zone, we're saying in any of those subdivisions, we would allow that type of signage.
And now, what if they wanted to say Black Lives Matter? Or the other welcoming signs? Can they?
Mhm.
And so they put up Black Lives Matter.
I don't think you'll see us come knocking on, I don't think you'll see anybody from the city knocking on their door.
Okay.
Or giving them a phone call or sending them a letter.
It's really important that we're all on the same page.
Mhm.
There's a lot.
That's
of-
why we're doing this.
Right, there's a lot of like, oh crap, they're changing all the rules and we're not gonna be able to speak. So I wanted to be sure that everybody in the city feels safe making statements in support of, cultural diversity or whatever else they want to put up. And that they don't have to take them down
Mhm.
at the end of the election cycle.
Not if it's a Black Lives Matters or any of those other similar type of signage. You wouldn't see us asking them to take those signs down. If it is for a ballot measure or for a politician who's up for election, we would ask them to take those down 5 days after the election is over.
And this only pertains to people in the city of North Plains, correct?
That's correct. This code only applies to the city limits of North Plains.
So the people with Let's Go Brand.
Anybody that's an unincorporated Washington County, it would not apply to them.
Okay, thanks. That's
Yeah.
the clarification.
Yeah, thank you for commenting.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify, please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Ron Reyes, 31597 Northwest Pacific Street.
Thank you.
I thought I saw somewhere in there is hidden, right there, residential one. Go back up a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm running out of window space here for you. Let me see if I can get it where you can see it. Sorry, it's moving too quick.
Or down, I'm sorry.
There we go. Can you see what you need to there, or you need to go down further? Does that work?
I'm going the opposite direction.
Oh, you want me to go this way? You want that one?
Two A is what you
Yeah,
might be
2A.
looking at.
2A.
No, go down, no. Go back, go back.
Middle of that.
Oh,
Right
I
there.
was told I was going the wrong way.
Go back up just a little bit.
No,
No,
Other
Yeah,
direction.
the other direction.
Middle of page 123.
I mean, I'm right there. I've been there.
A little bit more.
That's where I just was.
Stop.
Right there.
Got it.
there?
Yeah, residential is 2A, one temporary sign permitted exceeding square feet area. We can only have one sign.
No, that's
Well,
for,
that's just a different size.
that's a certain type of sign, no,
Oh.
that's not a yard sign,
It has nothing to do with temporary signs.
Yeah.
Oh.
right? Isn't that correct?
Yeah, I'm reading it real quick.
6 square feet or something.
Like a real estate sign or whatever.
6, well, it's not, but
If he was
one
someone-
temporary
so
sign
that's
per
every
frontage, not
Yeah.
6 square.
That
No.
had nothing to do with temporary signs.
Yeah, so you can kind of see, you know, it's referring basically to what you might have for like a garage sale or something of that nature. Is what that particular section is trying to address. Sorry, I didn't understand what one you wanted to look at there.
Please come forward. State your name and address for the record.
Mike Strong, 10750 Northwest 29th Avenue. I have testimony, but I have a little more question than any kind of testimony. On the political signs, there's a lot going on online about that. So I get if you have signs for candidates or measures that are on the ballot. Let's not have them left up for years afterwards. That makes sense to me. But is that for any political sign? So we live in a democracy. There's a lot of politics that happen that we don't get to vote on, or not directly anyway. We vote for.
I think what you're seeing,
So we have more common statements, and she kind of alluded to it. Do those have to be inside that electioneering time, or, you know, more time to do that? Let's say our Oregon legislature is going to be voting on something, and I'm pretty passionate about it. So I want to put a sign out that says, you know, call your congressman, tell them no, or the kids, or whatever. Are those included in that? And would it be banned because they're not voted on, or how does that work?
that's a good question. I've never seen people put signs up for
Right.
Senate bills or House bills before. That would be
But it's
unique.
something that's political, but it's not something I get to vote on.
Sure, understand.
Is
Um,
there not a time frame on temporary signs? I mean,
I would have to go back through this. I don't have it memorized. You know, we're trying to call out the most common types of signs that people tend to put into their property, which would be garage sale type signs, for sale, a political sign. Those are your most common type of signs. So I mean, we understand that people are going to try and put up other signs as well, such as what we've been talking about, like a Black Lives Matter. If you wanted to put up, I'm not in favor of House Bill whatever or Senate Bill whatever, I'd like to see it. I don't think you're gonna probably get much pushback from us. I don't think many people are gonna do it though, so I don't think it's a huge issue for us.
I was trying to pick something neutral, but let's put something up that's more topical for our area. I'm for the changes in our city boundaries and farmland, or I'm against it. Either one, would either one of those be a problem?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I
I
understood.
wanted to sign up this, commenting on the changes coming for our, planning.
I think what I would probably do is, that's a tough one.
Boundary, et cetera. That's political speech,
Right.
but it's not tied to an election.
I understand. I would have to see your sign. I mean, it's pretty hypothetical, you know, and it's hard to speak to a hypothetical, but if you wanted to stop down to the city at any time and meet with me and share with me what you wanted to do, we would look at the code together and I'll help you come up with a conclusion. I mean, I can't speak to something that's so broad. You know, if you have something in mind that you would like to put up, please stop down to the city and come and meet with me. And we'll talk about it. And we'll look at the sign code together and we'll try and see how it fits into that sign code. If it's a gray area, we'll chat about it. We'll talk about it with the city manager, myself, and we'll see what makes sense.
Why would it be a gray area?
Well, you know, you're getting into stuff that's not necessarily covered in the code. And it's also, it could be for a house bill, it could be for something else, right? You're kind of throwing out a lot of what if scenarios. So it's very hard to address that.
Speech, so it's actually simple, just like an actual election sign for either a measure or.
And that's what I'm saying. It would depend on the wording of your sign.
So if the sign said, save farmland.
If that's all it said, I probably would not have a problem with it.
Well, I think one of our concerns from the planning commission is that we're not trying to stop people from putting up signs, but if all of a sudden everybody puts up whatever they want to say, my neighbor's an idiot or something like that, you know, we have to have some.
Right, that's the brand is.
Yeah, well, and
My neighbor's an idiot, I'm not sure calls them political speech. And my concern is political speech is one of the very higher protected core speeches from our First Amendment.
Well,
And I think
but yeah,
and I think as you can see what we're doing here, we're not trying to tread into that,
yeah.
right? We're trying to say, put up those signs, put them up. It would just make sense that if you're going to put one up, that would be for a candidate or a
Well,
measure that's in the
election,
current
yeah.
cycle, right? Because that's what you're trying to sway people on, right? You're trying to get people to join you in your way of thinking that, hey, there's this ballot measure or there's this person you should support or not support, right? I don't know why you would put something up temporarily on your property that wasn't for something relevant.
Well, again, we're all engaging in politics right here. And you folks are voting, but I'm not voting. This isn't an election and not a measure, but I would think my freedom of speech to comment, whether verbally or in writing on my own property, would probably be protected speech, or I would, again, I'm thinking stuff, but that's not really trying to regulate. I get where elections make sense. It's a very defined time period. So, hey, it's topical, but there's a lot of politics that's topical.
So we're not, you know, so if you're throwing up a sign, say farmland, do that. When you start putting it up and you're relating it to a ballot measure, then it becomes one of these type of temporary political signs because you're tying it to something, right? If you want to just put up, like I said, Black Lives Matters, Go Brandon, you know, some type of other sign like that. I think you can see here, we're saying, we're not going to really get into that. We're not going to say that that's a problem.
Yeah.
go ahead.
Mike, these are great points.
Yeah.
I'm down here. Steve, I think you're doing a good job navigating this. I think that the key word of any of this little change here is the word election, because that's the clear and objective thing that we can tie to criteria and code. Elections seem very defined. All of the other things you're discussing in this woman before you, those are great questions that our founding fathers and forefathers and mothers in this country have debated forever. Frankly, that's how our attorneys and city attorneys get money too, is when we go through with these questions. So it's difficult for us to get into and try to legislate every sort of sign that may come about. I think that's why Steve is saying, you know, it's going to be very broad. We do try to have some areas of just asking for decorum from the community when placing signs up. And you're right, it's a very hard political time, in this country, so we're gonna likely try to not wade into legislating what someone's sign is going to say, unless it's back to a particular election period. And that's just try to keep the community clean and cluttered and things like that, but believe me, every community, every city attorney hears these questions all the time, and you never have a good answer, but they should. Yeah, fine, it's tough.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, I think you're kind of hearing the same message. And so I'm not sure if we've completely answered your question, but I think you're seeing that we understand the issue and we're just trying to regulate a limited type of a sign here during a limited type of a time period.
I think the other thing to consider is this goes both ways, you know, yes, no, this guy, that guy. I mean, it's, you know, it's not just one side that's being sectioned out over someone else.
Yeah, no, and
It's
again,
even across the board.
I guess the worry that I've seen a little bit online is more that this is going to maybe include the language of elections and measures, but it will infringe on people's ability to express themselves when it comes to things that they don't get allowed. They're not allowed.
Yeah, and I think you're seeing that we're not doing that. We're saying, you know, express yourself. But if you're going to express it in a way that's going to make it for a particular issue, then it's going to probably fall under this temporary sign limitation, right? Where
I get it, vote on or not vote on.
I think what you're seeing here is this is for things that would be voted on, right, by the
So it's
public.
an issue, but it's not a voting thing when if nothing's changing.
Like Chair King said, you know, if you want to sit there and say, I don't like my neighbor or something, we're not going to get in on that. We're not touching that.
I am trying to limit my discussion to political.
Yeah.
So I don't like
So-
Joe.
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm not concerned.
But Joe is political.
Is there a Joe here?
He's the president of the United States.
Did we cover your questions?
I think, so. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else wishing to testify?
We do have a hand up.
Okay, I'm asking the audience. Okay, take the one on the.
Yes, hi. My name is Katie Miller. I'm at 16211 Northwest Dairy Creek Road in North Plains. I am the graphic designer for the Stop the Sprawl signs that are displayed in town, and we have a lot of community members who are really upset about the part where you put a lien on their property if they don't take it down within 60 days. Now, I know Heather asked something about that. Did you say that that was an accident that was in there, or is that supposed to be in there?
I think you're kind of looking at the abandoned signs is really more for our commercial and industrial types of signs, not so much a temporary sign.
Okay.
If you're doing a political sign, it would have to have been down 5 days after the election. You know, there's not like this 60-day time frame. I don't think you're going to see us as big sticklers going out there and pulling signs. I think we're just trying to provide some clarity here that, you know, put up your signs, please make them for something that's current. Have them up there 6 weeks before the election and take them down 5 weeks after. That's how it reads today. And we just added that one sentence to try and clarify that, you know, it would make sense that it would be for something that's current. So
the lien isn't for temporary election signs. The lien isn't for those signs. It only applies.
I think what you would see is we would try and work with the property owner. We would call them and say, hey, you know, the election passed, you know, this is our code. Would you mind removing the sign? This is kind of how we require that. You know, we were hoping that people would just, you know, willingly do the right thing and say, okay, we get it. The election's over. It probably does make sense to take the sign down at this point.
Okay, but there's still a possibility. I mean, I'm sure everybody would take them down within 60 days, but you know, there's still people who are worried. It's still a potentiality that if they don't remove it, that there would be a lien put on their property.
Again, we had a huge sign up at the last election, that was on a property that faced out to Glencoe that was probably up for months after the election. And we didn't do anything to that. I don't foresee us doing anything in this situation either.
Oh, okay. I mean, I
And
just
again, we're
didn't
just trying to
need
eliminate
to be
blight.
in there. But does it need to be in there if you're not gonna do anything?
Just to clarify, any lien for an abandoned sign, the amount of the lien would be for the cost of removal of the sign.
Correct.
So.
Right.
if you're talking about a yard sign, I don't think Chuck Steve will charge you the $5 for the time to take the yard sign out. This is more related to large structures.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
So the
Great.
lien would be 0.
Thank you, Kai.
Okay.
Got it. Okay, thank you. And my only other comment was, and I think, Mike Strom already asked a little bit about this. If I were to make a sign that just said, stop the sprawl, and it took out the vote no, would that be allowed? If someone wanted to say, like, after the election is done, they still wanted to voice their disapproval, would that be okay?
Again, I would have to see the size and the location and all that. I doubt we're gonna really do much about it, though.
Okay. Great.
Again, everything's case by case, right? You're asking a lot of hypotheticals, show me a sign, show me where you want to put it, make sure it's if you put it in a clear vision area where a sign's not supposed to be, we're going to ask you to move it. If it's too large, we're going to ask you to make it smaller. We do have some specifications that we're trying to operate in, so people don't have, things that are unsightly. You have to remember, these are in residential neighborhoods, right? You have neighbors, that they probably would like it to be somewhat proportionate to the other things in the neighborhood, not something gigantic with lights flashing and everything. So I think you can see we're trying to be practical. We're trying to sit there and monitor this in a reasonable way. We're not going to go out and be the Gestapo and start ripping signs out and fining people. This is largely done on a let's work together basis. Here's what the code says. Thank you for putting the sign up. Would you mind taking it down now? Maybe the next election cycle, you have another sign you want to put up, go for it. But I think you're seeing that we're just trying to be reasonable and trying to eliminate, unnecessary blight in the city after an election is over.
Great. My last question is, where they put the sign on their property, is the space between the sidewalk and the road, is that city property normally? Or does it vary?
It is a little bit of a challenge in North Plains because we don't have sidewalks on all of our roads. Generally, our right-of-ways are 60 feet wide. And so as long as it's outside of the right-of-way and it's on private property, then it would be okay.
Okay, thank you. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other person wishing to testify?
I will.
Please
Come
come
on up.
forward, state your name and address for the record.
Katie, if you could take your hand down, please, that'd be great.
Oh, yep.
Thank you.
My name's Kathleen Warren. I'm at 1045 Northwest Virginia, 11th Street. So I could throw a rock open. I hit my front door. But I think a lot of people are also worried just about where this could go from here. Like, this is a step. Where's this go from here? I mean, we feel like that something's being taken away from us. What's the next step being taken away from? Because it doesn't say that, that it could be like the houses, some of our new houses have like a HOA or whatever, where they have to like have a lawn a certain way or no sign, or so they purchased a house that'll tell you what color paint you can paint your house, et cetera. So I know, talking with my husband, that, they just have some concerns, people, neighbors, whatever, get gathering together. What's the next step? What happens next? Because then the reality of it, no one says, oh, we're gonna do this, but it doesn't really say, no, we can't do it.
I'm not sure if I understood everything, but you did bring up HOAs, and HOAs clearly operate outside of our code. As you probably know, HOAs, any bylaws and rules that they have in their codes, are usually more restrictive than what the city has, because that's the only way they can go, right? They can kind of adopt the same type of language that we have, but if they want to do something different to what our code says, they can only be more restrictive. They can't be less restrictive than our code. So as far as how the sign code may apply to a specific subdivision that has an HOA, the HOA may say something more than what our sign code says, but it wouldn't say less. I'm not sure if that answers your question or not. So, anything that's in our code would apply to all the residential property in the city, unless there's an HOA that has somehow a more restrictive requirement than our code.
Originally, like as of maybe a few days ago, they had those requirements already in the HOA department.
Okay.
And so we've just basically kind of moved into having the same thing going on in our community without having that rule. But then now this feels like we have a rule. So anyway, I just listening to my husband and our friends, and I live right next to the park, so we get a lot of input. So, I don't want, here that I have to take my Christmas tree down at the end of my house come Christmas time because it's too big or the lights are too blinky or whatever.
Again, it sounds like maybe you have some CCNRs that are already more restrictive than the city code. We're not going to take your Christmas tree down though.
Yeah, in my yard. Well, I pulled it. But anyway.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify? Please come forward. Please state your name and address for the record. Could you speak into the next?
31399 Northwest Boston. I think there's a lot of misconception going on. I work with codes, so I understand language all the time. The changes that you made really are a lot.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, make sure the is on to pull it full. Let me check real quick. Yeah, that thing at the top, just make sure it's forward.
Previously in the code, I've never read this code before, but I understand the importance of language. I think with all that, we'll call it hysteria that's been going on with possible changes in land use, expansion and whatnot has got to kind of out. I don't think there's any real threat. To me, I'm looking at it more of a keeping your ditch clean after as a sign in your yard for so long. There's nothing telling you can't have a politician's name posted in their ditch, even if it's not an election cycle. I don't see any. And there's a lot of misconception out there. I think people are maybe getting the wrong idea and feeling like they're being told they can't do something that's pretty fair. That is still a lot of it. Remember your plan. I think it's what people are scared of. Really. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to testify? See, there's only one left.
Oh, God, yeah.
And no one else on
Let
the
me see, yeah, let me stop sharing to see if there's anybody else there. Not seeing any more hands.
Okay. So what is currently staff recommendation?
At this point, I think Chair King, it would be good for the Planning Commission to deliberate over the conversations that you heard to see if there's any additional changes you would like to propose in the text amendment. And if so, staff will go back and make those updates and bring them back to you at your next Planning Commission meeting. We will discuss those and any other comments that folks may have. And then if everything is up to ready to make a recommendation at that next Planning Commission meeting, then you can make a recommendation on the proposed sign amendment, text amendments, and then we will go to the City Council to hold more hearings.
So Commissioner Labonte, you had some comments that you would like to discuss.
Yeah, the one that I brought up, regarding the temporary signs, and they're all zones. I don't know if anybody else looked at that section, with the new proposed language. If you're good with the new proposed language or possible with the amendments I suggested tonight.
I'm good with the amendments you suggested to make, including the research into the auditor, to make sure it's, if the auditor is selected, or if it needs to be the, whatever it needs to be. I support it.
Any other comments, Commissioner?
I agree.
So, Mr. Miller?
I'm sorry. What was the question?
The comments that the planning commission is making, and you saying, have you got those down?
Yes, the one I heard was from, for the temporary signs as originally proposed by, Commissioner Labonte, and it sounds like, that the rest of the planning commission is in favor of that.
And also the reference to following up on the county auditor?
Make sure the county auditor is.
Yes.
appropriate,
Or
Or the
if
county
it needs to be
recorder.
something else?
Yep, we'll fix the M2 language, so it doesn't say MT. We'll fix the temporary language per Commissioner Labonte's recommendation, and I'll probably have to email you, Commissioner Labonte, just to make sure I got it accurate. So be looking for an email from me on the change to make sure I got it the way you'd like it to be written. And then the unlawful signs in the city will also make that recommendation. So I'll be working back and forth with Commissioner Labonte on those, just to make sure that the language is the way that she has proposed it, and then we'll put that into the text amendment and bring that back before you at the next meeting.
So your recommendation is to continue the public hearing then?
That is my recommendation based upon the changes that have been suggested and agreed to by the planning commission.
Okay, is that the consensus of the planning commission?
Can we move to approve and approve with those changes?
You could, you absolutely could. I just thought maybe you would want to all collectively have it come back and take another look at it to make sure there's nothing out. If there's nothing else, then yes, absolutely.
Approve the TA 24-25 sign code, pending the change proposed by Commissioner Labonte and subject to the conclusion of the matter related to county auditor language.
Point of order. I think you need to close the public hearing if you're gonna have a vote.
So we're still in discussion.
Thank you.
So, so the recommendation or the current discussion of closing the public hearing and with the adjustments to what we talked about, is that the consensus of the planning commission?
Yes.
Okay. I will close the public hearing at 7:32 for TA 24-25 sign code text amendment.
Now, I move to approve the TA 24-25 sign code text amendment, subject to the changes proposed by Commissioner Labonte and subject to the conclusion of the matter related to the county auditor language.
Just for clarification, you're not voting to approve, you're voting to make a recommendation to the city council, yes. So to move the recommendation forward with those proposed changes would be a motion.
I move to approve the recommendation forward to the city council to approve the changes in text amendment 24-25 sign code text amendment. Subject to the changes proposed by Commissioner Labonte and subject to the conclusion of the matter related to the county auditor language. I didn't get this part right. Second.
Perfect.
All right, it's been moved by Commissioner Miller, second by Commissioner Sanadel for recommendation approval to the city council for TA 24-25 time sign code text amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any abstentions? All right, Unanimous. All right, item number 7 is unfinished business. Do we have any unfinished business?
Yes, well, it was the sign code for a long time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But we've got that complete now. So great work, everybody. I really appreciate your staying with it and getting it to this point. So thank you for that. As far as any other unfinished business right now, there is none.
So it's all been finished.
It's all been finished.
So that'll move us on to item number 8, new business.
New business. You will be getting an application coming before you soon for a marijuana dispensary over on Glencoe Road. That application was submitted on Friday, and we're anticipating a hearing on June 12th on that particular application. So that will be probably your next public hearing. It is possible we might be able to get here in May, but just due to completeness review, public notice requirements, things of that nature, June is looking more likely.
Okay. Any other new business?
No.
Thank you. Move on to item number 9, is land use application, city project, monthly report. Any comments, questions, concerns, of those in the package? Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 10.
As you can see, we're getting quite a few building permits.
Planning commission comments. If any of the planning commissioners have any comments to staff? Or the city council? Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 11, city council comments. Mayor Lanahan?
Moving the mic down.
Thank you, Chair Payne, I appreciate that. I just want to thank the planning commission for all the work that you have been doing on the sign code. I know there's been a lot of work and a lot of back and forth, and I really appreciate your time and effort there. I also want to thank you for your support in your work on the early growth boundary expansion. You know, we've got a May election coming up, so other than that, I just want to again welcome our new planning commissioner. So glad you're on board, and hope you really enjoy your time on the commission. Right, there's a lot of work to do and a lot of forward thinking to be had. So we're glad you're on board.
Thank you. All right, thank you. So item number 12 is staff comment. Any final comment?
Yeah, I think I'll just echo what the mayor said. Welcome to the planning commission. It's great to have a new planning commission member. So you made it through your first hearing. So congratulations on that. Your first 2 hearings, as a matter of fact. You had a quasi judicial and a legislative. So, you know, really a full plate on the first night. But no other comments. Really appreciate all your help though on the sign code amendments for everybody. Thank you.
Is there any other commission business? If not.
I'll have one. I do have one comment to share with
please.
you. Happy Play went to ODOT to request signage on Highway 26 to help people find their business. When you make that request, the state requires the local jurisdiction to do a follow-up sign, is what it's called. So that people can, so if they're going to put something on 26 to let people know that there's a business there, they want to make sure there's a way that people find it. And so when you're not immediately on Glencoe, if you're back off the road, they require an additional wayfinding sign, if you will. We've got a couple of those already on Glencoe for the Rogue Brewery and for the winery. They're right down there by Caburn Street on Glencoe. So right before you get to commercial there's a couple signs there that do that. We're also going to be putting a sign up for Happy Play now by the just to the south of King Torta there. There's a there's a crosswalk sign there, and we're going to add it to that sign pole right there. So just wanted to let you know that sign is coming, and we have a precedence for that type of sign, and so we're going to allow this sign as well.
Okay. All right, there's no other commission business, our next regular meeting is Wednesday, May the 8th, and not at 7 o'clock, like the agenda says. but
Old habits die hard here.
6 o'clock. And with that, we are adjourned at 7:39.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, everybody online. We're gonna end the meeting for everyone right now. Thank you.